Hey guys, I'm Bruce, I'm a noob, and today we are going to review Panzer IV F from Tamiya. And this is a new kit from Tamiya. Came out late last year, got it for Christmas, very excited about that. I like building Tamiya kits, they're easy. If I'm pressed for time, it's nice, but after you're done, it's you know, it's kind of like, is that it? Is that all I've done? I don't know. I built it, it's there, but you know, it's like fast food versus a sit-down dinner, I guess. Anyway, we're going to do a review. We're going to look at the sprues, look at the instructions, look at the marking options. I'll give you some thoughts, and you guys can tell me what you think and if you agree or disagree with what I say. So let's take a look. So, first of all, we've got the hull tub, and you know, fairly standard Panzer IV kind of hull tub. We've got a bit of detail on the bottom, if you do want to have it somehow showing the bottom of the tank. We've got the molded on fuel caps, our receptacles there for the final drive and the bogies. Obviously the rear plate's going to snap on there. If you look really close, and I'll switch to a photo because you may not be able to see that, it says copyright 1994. So this is the hull tub from their Panzer IV H early kit. From kind of the early 90s, which in and of itself is fine. I mean, it's, you know, it's serviceable for sure. We've got our return rollers molded on there. Some manufacturers would have you attach these parts separately, but you know what, that's serviceable, it's fine, no worries. But that's the first bit of that we're going to see in this kit, but not the last. So, now this is the E-Sprue, and again, if you're familiar with early 90s Tamiya Panzer IV kits, this is going to look very familiar because this is the same wheel and bogie sprue from that same early H kit from the 90s. So, you know, the molding's fine, good detail, everything's still pretty crisp, so if they're using the same molds, they certainly haven't lost their crispness for age, I guess you'd say. You'll notice it does actually come with the later H and J drive wheel here, along with the one from the F and the G, which was included in both kits. Although, of course, in the H kit, they didn't give you the G final drive, even though they gave you the drive wheel. They just gave you the H one. But we're not going to use that because that is for an H, and we're building an F here. So, the only gripe I guess I've got with this, and again, I mean, the mold hasn't suffered for age, obviously, but the one-piece bogies to me, I think, are a little, not saying that, you know, it has to be like a 20-part Dragon super kit kind of bogey assembly, but to me, you know, they have such a great reputation for clever engineering and being able to take, you know, things that should be complicated and having them just fit together beautifully. And I'm sure if they'd really put their heads to it, they could have come up with, you know, some kind of semi-articulated bogey there, because these are molded solid one piece, which means your road wheels are going to be perfectly flat. And if you do want to put this on a diorama base, then, you know, the terrain is going to have to be flat. You can't put this, you know, it doesn't articulate over bumps or hills or anything. But so, you know, it's old. It's an old mold, but it still looks pretty good. And you know, that one-piece bogey is probably about my only issue with that, because it's definitely possible to do something much nicer today without really impacting ease of assembly. So that's the E-Sprue. So the B-Sprue basically has all of our superstructure bits and our turret bits. Now, Tamiya has actually departed, I guess, from their more traditional way of engineering an armor kit. You'll notice that we've got our superstructure sides, rear, our fenders, and our front plate and everything are all separate pieces. And we can see that if we tip the superstructure sort of sideways, that in fact you have to assemble all of the side pieces and the front piece and back piece around this superstructure. So that's adding some complexity that maybe we wouldn't normally expect on a Tamiya kit. And it's counterintuitive, I guess, to this kind of idea of the simple build. So they've made a deliberate decision there. Now that gives them all kinds of flexibility, because you can add different, say, superstructure sides and take division ports out and then use it for an H kit later on. So I'm sure that's why they've done this, is that they want to maintain the ability to then come up with later variants without having to completely retool everything, right? They'll just have to retool the sides and then they can have this top piece serve for an H. Now the turret, what are we used to getting on turrets, right? We're used to getting that nice little one-piece turret that you just pop the gun on the front and you pop the hatch on the top and the bottom and you're good to go. You'll see here we have a separate turret top with no sides. We have a bottom, we have our turret bin, but now we've got a turret front and separate turret sides and rear. So again, very different for Tamiya. So as you're building this, and we'll check it out in the instructions, you're going to have to be able to basically take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate pieces and kind of get them all together and have them all line up perfectly. Knowing Tamiya, it should fit together quite well, but again, it's just very non-standard Tamiya sort of engineering, and I'm not opposed to it. I think it's fine as long as everything goes together well. So, you know, if there's a positive fit between the back of the turret and the sides, then that's great. And I guess we'll find out when I build it. But yeah, different, I guess, is all I'll say for Tamiya. So now we've got the C-Sprue. This is all F specific stuff, or G. So we've got our G, F and G final drive there. We've got our 2-piece barrel cleaning rod, so good Tamiya, you didn't pull a border and give us a 4-piece only. Now we've got tools, and the tools actually have little clamp handles on them. The downside, if I can get in close enough, is that they're solid. So you're gonna have to drill those out if you want it to look realistic. The proportions of the handles as well are a little off, like they're very square and they should be kind of elongated. That's not uncommon though. Border made the same mistakes, Vesda made the same mistake. The tool clamp handles rather, it's better than nothing, better than the old blob clamps, but you know, they just had to extend that out about a 0.5 millimeter and it would have looked a little better. Antenna trough, there's our antenna. Very, very, very fine crowbar there. So the smaller parts look really nice. Again, are kind of filled in square clamp handle. Wire cutters don't look too bad, although there's no handle on the forward clamp there to open it. Jack block looks pretty good. This is our smoke discharger, or part of it, for the rear. There's the cover for it. We've got our turret ventilation for the roof of the turret there. We've got our hatches and no ejection pin marks on the inside. That's really nice. Now, last time I checked, this was 2021. Why, in the name of the modeling gods, is Tamiya giving us a 2-piece muffler? I don't know, right? There's this thing now called slide molding, where you can mold round shapes and even have them hollow if you want. Yeah, I think this is just unnecessary, at least for a kit that you're going to pay $50 or more for. Right, I would expect that to be slide molded. There's your ends for your muffler there. But you know, it's not the end of the world, but it just seems kind of lazy that they're not up in their game a bit, I guess, because they can make really nice molds and mold really, really nice parts. They do it all the time, but for some reason they've stuck us with this. So it's just some unnecessary cleanup that you really shouldn't have to do in today's age. But the fine parts are quite nice. I mean, there's our ladder right there, if you can see that. That's quite nice. Now here's a machine gun. And they actually have, it looks like, no, the end's solid. Shoot, I thought the end was drilled out. So there you go. Again, 2021. If you want a machine gun that doesn't have a solid plastic nub at the end of it, you're going to have to get in there and, you know, drill it out with a pin vise. I don't get it. Like, that's just lazy, right? They have the capability to do it, to allow a modeler to, you know, build a kit, relatively simple kit, but a kit in a relatively short period of time and try to make it look nice, and they give us a solid machine gun barrel end. So I don't know. I'm starting to think that, you know, between stuff like that, stuff like the 2-piece muffler, reusing the old 1-piece bogies from the 1990s kit, that, you know, they've done the bare minimum, I guess, right? Here's our auxiliary muffler, again, 2 pieces, right? So you're going to have a seam on the top, you're going to have a seam on the bottom. You're going to have to fill those and sand those if you want, or you can leave the seam, I guess, if it's not a big deal to you, but there's no need for that. There's absolutely no need for that in 2021. We've got our inertial starter crank. Again, we've got our little solid handles, so better than the old blob clamps, but you know, build a mold that just leaves a hollow handle, because they can do the fine parts, right? There's a fine part right there. More tools, axe, yeah. So, okay, overall, man, not bad, except just for these inexplicably lazy, you know, decisions they've made, I guess, to kind of stick the modeler with some work that just isn't required normally, or shouldn't be required. Anyway, that's that sprue. Oh, onto the D-Sprue. This is the hatches for the top of the engine deck, our upper glacis, and our forward fenders. So the fenders, you'll see, have a really nice anti-skid pattern on them, which is good. Not a fan of the fact that they've already pre-drilled the holes out. Again, I talked about this in some other kits like the Border F. It sticks you with having to take a certain tool arrangement, right? You can't make unit-specific modifications to where the tools are stood because the handles are all there, and good luck trying to recreate anti-skid texture if you fill that with putty. So, alright, so you can build a Panzer IV F in the, with a tool configuration, I guess. And that's, you know, fine for a lot of people. Nice fine molding there. We've got our little cables for the lights. A bit of crazing in the plastic, which is just indicative, you can see it in the light there. Just flow marks from when it was drying. So just inconsistent cooling, I guess, in terms of the molding process, but yeah, not the end of the world. It's certainly not a texture you can feel. It's just one that'll be covered up with paint, so that's okay. I do like the fact that they've given us both the standard engine hatches and the tropical ones. So you can do either a normal F, or you can do one that's gone to North Africa, or some that went to Russia. And in fact, one of the marking guides covers that, and we'll talk about that when we get to the marking guides. I love the texture on the ejection case basket there, although they've molded it attached to the frame behind the gun there, the breech area. So that's something that's going to cause some concern for me, because I'm pretty clumsy and I can just see that snapping off, but I'll have to be extra careful. But by doing this, as nice as that pattern is and the fabric sort of texture, we now have a two-piece basket that we're going to have to glue together and then fill, sand, all that kind of stuff. So it's one choice they've made. You know, some could say I'd rather do away with the fabric texture, or if I want fabric texture, I could use Milliput in a file and sanding and, you know, put it in myself. But this way now you have a seam you have to clean up regardless. So, you know, you could make that call either way, but yeah, that is a nice texture for sure, but I'm not looking forward to that seam. So now we've got the gun. So you can see here in the sort of the part of the gun that pivots within the mantlet. First of all, they've molded the machine gun. The coax machine gun is molded onto the gun. Again, that is to me a high probability of snappage there in normal handling, as opposed to, you know, having it as a separate piece and then you can attach it early or late or whenever you want. Yeah, that's risky, because I can see that a lot of modelers breaking that off during assembly and painting. And again, the end is not hollow, so that's just, yeah, there's no excuse for that. Sides of the turret bin there. Here's our aerial deflector. Yeah, it looks good. We've got our recuperator housing. Again, that's two pieces, so there'll be a seam on either side. Some companies will mold that as one piece. Slide mold it, or have an insert in the top with the little bolt holes so that you can get that detail, but you know, that's not the worst place to have a seam, so it's not a huge amount of work to clean up. Here's our vent covers for the intake and outtake on the sides of the engine compartment. Those are nice and thin. They have pins in the back and extra ejector pin marks, so I think if you wanted to model this with those flaps closed, you would have a bit of cleanup to do on the back. And if I recall, they don't even give that as an option in the instructions. So here's our breech, fire extinguisher. Yeah, so Not bad. I mean, I guess the questionable decision to mold the coax machine gun into the actual internal part of the mantlet, breakage risk there, and then having the seam to deal with on the turret basket. But I do like the fact now this is our short 75 gun, so you've got the base of the gun there, and then a couple of pieces we'll see that are going to go on the top of that, so you don't have a two-piece barrel. That's a definite improvement over those old 90s kits, so right choice there. So now there's the E-Sprue, and this is our link and length tracks. And one thing Tamiya has done is they've given us this little jig here so that we can actually assemble the tracks. You know, this is the top run, obviously, with all the bumps to account for the return rollers and the sag in the track. That's okay. You know, it's certainly better than rubber band. Some manufacturers do link and length will give us that top run as one piece with the sag already molded into it. But you know what, that's not the end of the world. It's just a bit of assembly you have to do, and they do have two of these sprues, so you get two jigs. And then there's our 40 centimeter track, and the molding's nice and crisp. We've got solid guide horns, we've got hollow guide horns, which we should have. But if you look down the side of each track link on either side, there's a little oval shaped hole there. And that was for taking the hammer stolen ice cleats that would kind of go in there and then be secured with a cotter pin. Tamiya has chosen to mold those solid. So you get the sort of the outline of it, but the inside is solid. So those should be hollow straight through. You know, Dragon does it, Zvezda does it, Border does it, but for some reason Tamiya has deliberately decided not to give you hollow hammer stolen holes on the track. So if you were to, you know, put some dark wash in there, you can probably get away with it not being obvious, I guess, but like, why? Like, again, this is Tamiya. They are probably the leaders in terms of molding quality and technology in the industry, and they've just cheaped out and not given us hollow holes on the sides of the track. So again, I'm mystified about some of their choices, given what we know they're capable of. You know, and I know a couple of modelers I've seen on Facebook have actually gone in and drilled these all out by hand, because again, it's not going to be glaringly noticeable, but if you really look at the model, you'll notice those are solid, even if you put wash in there. So I don't know, that's just, I don't want to say lazy, but it just seems kind of lazy. We've got our vision blocks here for the cupola. Yeah, there's our front toe points. So that's nice, those are separate pieces. They're not kind of that, you know, the old style where you'd have the back and then the two little loops would go on the front and then you'd have a seam line. Like, that's better, so that's a positive. The frame for the turret side door, our transmission hatch cover for the front, and there will be a little semicircular spherical thing that goes over that. And some nice little bits, you know, we got our lift hooks are quite nice and small in two pieces, which is pretty standard for most people. Yeah, so there's our grab handles for the top of the turret. So they can do it. I mean, they've got some nice small detail parts. They just kind of mailed it in on some of the some of the more obvious details, I guess. Anyway, now this is the Z sprue, and this is the sprue that I'm actually very, very excited about. After being a bit let down by some of the other stuff. These are the figures, and this kit comes with 3 figures, a commander and a crew member in each of the turret doors. For injection molded plastic, and oh my gosh, for Tamiya, if you've ever seen Tamiya figures from back in the day, these are amazing. Like, these are absolutely remarkable. The detail, they're to scale, they're not too big, they don't have giant heads, they don't look like cartoon characters. And there is just some awesome detail on these. Right, the fabric, the folds look really nice, and you can see they've actually gone through the exercise of putting separate flaps for the Panzer crew tunics. Yeah, there's one there, so you can see you'll get that nice kind of layered effect, much better than you would with just molding, injection molding plastic. And even the faces are actually very, very, very nice, if you can make that out. You know, they're not just, you know, those kind of, again, those 90s or 80s or 70s Tamiya heads. You know, nice fine little thumb and fingers. Figures actually have, you know, earphones on, and they give you, now these might be a bit thick, the little bands that go over the head for the headphones. You could probably replace that with a little strip of brass or something. But you can use those too. I mean, it's not the end of the world. There's a set of headphones there. Yeah, those straps over the top are a tiny bit thick, but you can sand them down too. But just wow, like that is, you know, they put effort into this, I guess, at the expense of the rest of the kit, because this is remarkable. These are really good, and the new Panzer IV-G they've just announced comes with five figures, which to me makes the kit worth buying, because, you know, these aren't like resin figure Alpine quality figures, but these are probably as good as anything I've ever seen in injected molded styrene. So well done to me. Like, that's really nice. Good job. We'll take a quick look at the decals. They actually, for Tamiya, don't look ridiculously thick. In fact, I mean, I can just barely feel the edge between the decal and the backing paper. But these are a far cry from, you know, the old ones that you had to seat down with multiple layers of decal solution. Yeah, those look really nice actually. Good job on those. Yep, happy with those. I think those look quite nice. Last but not least, our tow cable. And I'm sorry folks, that is not copper, that is not metal, that is string. Makes me kind of pine for, you know, melt together rubber band tracks. This is just so 1970s. Again, disappointed. They kind of mailed it in on this one. A little piece of copper wire would have been enough. Braided copper wire, that's all they needed, and they gave us string. So yeah, that again, I used the word lazy before, and I have to say I think that this is probably in that same category. Copper's been kind of the standard in the industry for what, 10-15 years now, and they gave us string. Oh well, anyway. Okay, let's look at the instruction book. So we've got all our usual kind of, you know, cover your ass warnings and safety precautions and things on the front. Recommended tools, of course, all Tamiya brand tools. Fair enough. Can't blame them for trying. So it talks about two different marking options, A and B. A being a 14th Panzer Division, Southern Russia in gray, and B being 5th Panzer Division in Russia, but in the Tropen 1 scheme, because we'll talk about that later during marking options. So a lot of this is going to look really familiar if you've built any of those 1990s kits. With the exception of the idler adjusters getting glued on, this is all identical. There's our two-piece auxiliary muffler. There's our two-piece main muffler body, gluing on the little toe point. Yeah, this is almost all verbatim, except for the idler adjusters out of the 1990s kit. Same thing here, we're gluing on the ends of the idler adjusters, our toe points on the front. Again, thankfully they're the separate side pieces, not the base with the two loops on the end, so that's positive, I guess. Now they do give us the armored cover for the G final drive and the G final drive, which aren't in the old H kit. Thankfully they give them to us here, because if you want to do a true early H in that old H kit, you need that and you need that, and they don't give them to you. Armored front goes on the front of the hull, and we've got our return rollers, we've got our bump stops going on. So this is all, again, very similar. I mean, it's the same hull tub, it's the same sprues. Our back goes on, and then our one-piece bogies go on. And I've said it before, the end of the bogie that's kind of square, that has the end of all the individual leaves of the springs, make sure that points forward. Not that I've ever done it backwards. So here's our link and length, and you can see it actually takes a fair number of pieces to build up this run with the sag built into it. And again, they could have done that as one piece, but that's okay. This isn't a lot of time, and even novice modelers shouldn't find it too hard, because they do give you the nice jig. Just make sure you don't glue the track links to the jig. Putting together our drive wheel, idler wheel, and road wheels, and this is where the polycaps come in. Again, I don't think those are bad at all. It gives you flexibility to take them off for painting and everything. Those all go on both sides. So pretty straightforward there. Now, link and length. This is, I mean, it's more friendly obviously than doing individual link like Dragon Magic Tracks or something. You know, new modelers are still going to find this maybe a little daunting, especially if you want to build them, because you have to assemble them obviously on the vehicle, and then you want to take them off and paint them separately, right? If you're just gluing them all together and leaving them on the vehicle, then yeah, you can glue them to the drive sprocket, you can glue them to the idler and the road wheels and the return rollers, and nothing moves, and it's easy. But a newer modeler might find doing this and then having them able to come off might be a bit challenging, but that's fine. So it gives you pretty good directions, and I gotta say, they show you how exactly it should look when it's done, so that's nice. We glue in these little supports, and then the upper glacis goes on, and then here now, this is our superstructure. It's inverted with our separate sides, front, back, and a brace in the middle, which is actually a nice touch. But again, a bit more than you might expect from a Tamiya kit, where normally, like, this is, you know, who does this stuff? Like Bronco does this, right? They give you multi-piece. Even Dragon gives you like vertical supports on the side of the superstructure to make it easier. But you know what? It'll probably fit together like a dream, I'm sure. It's Tamiya, right? So then our MG goes on, our driver's vision port go on. Now we mount the fenders, the front part of the fenders, the sides of our engine compartment, and the back all go on, again with the superstructure inverted. Our engine vents go on there, and now we do the back fenders, and they get on, put on there upside down as well, and then you flip the whole thing over, and down she goes. And it's Tamiya, it should fit really nicely. It's usually very difficult to misalign Tamiya parts because they have all the different locating bits. So fingers crossed, when I build it, that should be pretty straightforward. Choose between your solid or tropical engine hatches, depending on which paint scheme you're doing. Now I found this a bit unusual. In some of the hatches and vision ports, it has you cutting off a lot of little nubs, a lot of little tabs on the bottom. So that's interesting. I don't know why they would be there in the first place, because I think these are on one of the new sprues, but they've given you little tabs or nubs on the bottom. So that's unclear to me why they would do that. It's not a big deal, but again, kind of un-Tamiya-like to make you hack and slash too much. So now we're going to get our lights going. Those very fine little molded wires there. Obviously you want to be careful you don't break those. We've got our tools, S-hooks, our idler wrenches, crowbars. Jack's pretty straightforward, only what, 5 pieces. Armored smoke cover. And now all the rest of our tools and our spare tracks go down there. There's our string. Glue it to your plastic tow hooks, eyes, and yeah, it gives you how long to cut it. And then it gives you a very detailed tutorial on how to wrap it on there. They actually do give you some enameled brass wire to tie it with once it's on. And the real tank, there was actually a piece of chain that hung down from the top of the back plate there and wrapped around it. But use that if you want it. Here's our 2-piece base of the gun going together with that molded on MG. Our mantlet and the coax sleeve then fits over the coax machine gun, our recuperator housing. So the gun part up here, this all looks pretty good, just a bit of sanding there, that's not too bad. We've got our gun breech that goes on the back there, and our 2-piece turret basket with the guards, and then our the pivots there go on the sides of the gun, and that's all ready now to install in the turret, which we're going to move to next. So here is our 5-piece turret. We've got our base, our back, our 2 sides, and of course the front is going to mount onto that as well. So they want you to build it from the bottom up. I would expect you'd want to do this all at the same time, and probably not use extra thin cement on this. You want to use more of a slow drying glue, like you know, regular Tamiya, or I don't know, Rebel Contactor or something that's going to have a slower drying time, because I don't know, you're probably going to have to do a bit of adjustment. So unless this is just so slick that it all dry fits together and doesn't move and you can then put your glue on, but I would expect you're going to have to be careful and not glue things down too quickly, because if they're slightly out of alignment, then you'll be left with gaps and seams and things. So now our turret roof goes on, our antenna deflector, our vision ports on the sides, and pistol ports on the back. Our turret bin, so this is also a 5-piece affair. sides, the back of the bottom, the front, and then the top will go on that. Again, I expect the parts will fit really nicely. It's just a case of you know, having to kind of cradle multiple parts at the same time, which again for a beginning modeler might be a bit frustrating, and I can see fingerprints and gluey hands all over it, but that's okay. Again, not 100% Tamiya-like, I guess. Our cupola, we've got our vision ports go together onto the base. Here's our turret doors, and we're going to glue on the vision ports there. There's no clear sprue on this kit, so those aren't clear. So you're going to have to paint that some color that you believe approximates a glass lens, because a lot of companies give you those as clear parts, and then you can mask off the clear and paint it black, which is kind of the color it was, and then peel off your mask, and then you've got an actual clear surface, clear styrene surface there to simulate the glass. Yeah, so our doors go on. They show you exactly which door goes on which side, because some people do get that mixed up. Turret goes on. Our last couple of tools, wire cutters and the track tool, go on. And then here's our figures, and it gives you the option of a wedge cap or a crush cap for the commander, and then our two crew members in the side. Spare tracks on the front. Just make sure you don't make it look like the factory installed spare track links, which this kind of does. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, okay, you're okay then. You can put that many on. Don't put 7 on, because that wasn't done till later in G manufacturing. Shows you how to arrange the crew, your antenna, your jack block, spare tracks in the front. Okay, and that's it. Let's go on to the marking guide. We've got two marking options with this kit. The first one is 14th Panzer Division, so that's Panzer Regiment 36, in southern Russia during Fallblau, the summer of 1942. There's a very famous series of photos of 14th Panzer Division tanks, both Fs and initial Gs, so the F2, together, kind of meeting up and just stopping and, you know, doing a bit of an administrative halt. Those are easy to find. Just search for color Panzer IV photos or whatever. And the Fs were just gray, and then the F2 initial Gs were Tropen base with gray kind of blotches painted on them. So lots of photos of this tank, or at least its compatriots in 14th Panzer Division, to use for inspiration. So the other one, this is 5th Panzer Division, so Panzer Regiment 31, Russia as well, in 1942. Of course, this one is in it's in a sort of Tropen 1 scheme. So there are a number of photos of Fs from Panzer Regiment 31 around about this time period. Some of them show what looks like a normal Tropen 1 scheme, so a RAL 8000 base, that kind of custardy beige brown color. If you've seen pictures of Tiger 131, the base color of that is RAL 8000. They of course want you to use the new Tamiya XF92, which to me is not sort of caramel enough. It's kind of more of a neutral tan brown, and maybe a tiny bit light. But then they want you to do all the squiggles here in RAL 7008. Tamiya khaki is okay for that. To my eye, it's not quite olive green enough. 7008 was kind of a gray olive green color, but it's normally just applied in kind of smaller blotches and things like that around the tank. Here they have you doing 7008 in this really elaborate kind of squiggle pattern. Now, there are a few photos, and I'll stick one up here, of Panzer Regiment 31 tanks that are painted with these kind of squiggles, but if you look closely, the squiggles are very dark compared to the base color, and in reality, RAL 7008 and RAL 8000 are very close, very low contrast in black and white photos. So you would not see that much contrast if the squiggles in this picture were actually RAL 7008. So, like a lot of units did when the Tropen schemes came out, I interpret that photo anyway to mean that the base is RAL 8000. It may have a normal RAL 7008 blotchy kind of pattern on it, but that the squiggles over top are actually in RAL 7021 in Dunkelgrau. That's how I interpret it. Others may interpret it differently, but you know, this is very much a non-standard Trough color application. So it's your tank, do what you like, but that's kind of what I see when I see those photos. So I think Tamiya has kind of mixed up a couple of different tanks in coming up with this color scheme, because 814 certainly doesn't have a squiggle pattern like this on it in photos. So what are my thoughts? Tamiya's new Panzer IV F kit. I think it'll build really nicely. I think it's Tamiya, you know, the old joke, you throw it in the box and shake it and it comes out built. Something you can put together, you know, if you spent one full day from kind of, you know, morning till early evening on it, you could probably build it in a day. You know, and if that's your thing, that's what you want, you don't have a lot of bench time, that's awesome. But the fact that they're charging as much for this as you're going to, in fact, they're going to be charging more for this than they're going to charge for a Border Panzer IV kit or for a Zvezda Panzer IV kit. And I mean, Zvezda's got all kinds of dimensional and accuracy issues. You know, Border certainly has a couple of glaring historical errors, but as a kit overall, it's more detailed than this one. It builds pretty well, and you're going to spend about, what, 25% less on it? So I guess I'd question, why would you want to build a kit that has cut a lot of corners, you know, on the track links, on the muffler, on the, you know, some of the other things we pointed out during the sprue review there. Why do you want to pay an almost premium price for a kit that's cut so many corners? Unless it is purely because you don't have a lot of bench time and you've got to crank it out, you know, in a day or over a weekend. Because other than that, I mean, to me, the only thing that would make this kit appealing are the figures, because they are beautiful. You can spend a bit more money and get resin, but 3 really awesome quality styrene crew figures to me are, you know, they're probably worth about 20 bucks. So in Canadian dollars, if I'm going to spend 70 bucks on this kit with tax, and I'm getting these figures, and really I'm kind of only spending 50 bucks on the kit. And that's what a Border kit costs, I guess. So in that sense, nah, it's not bad. But it just seems, like I said, I've used the word before, it just seems lazy that Tamiya, this company with this, you know, godlike reputation for ingenuity in engineering and design and superlative molding technology, has kind of cut a lot of corners. And I just don't see why. They have a chance to really step their game up, give us slide molded machine gun barrels, give us slide molded, you know, mufflers and things like that. And they didn't bother. So I don't know. I guess, you know, they're going to milk this one now, obviously. They've already announced the G kit. I fully expect there'll be an H. I fully expect there'll be a Nashorn and a mobile wagon and a, you know what I mean, a Whirlwind probably, because they can now milk this, you know, just like Border's starting to do with their kits, and I'm sure Ryfield will as well. So yeah, up to you. Make your mind up. I'm going to build it, and I'm going to use it actually to demonstrate my Panzer Gray Dunkelgrau painting technique or sequence. And, you know, I know it'll go together quick, and it'll fit together well, and I'll come away with it saying, yeah, it's okay, it's nice. But no photo etch, no clear parts, and no slide molding. You know, I would expect that, because that's what we're getting on less expensive kits, right? So, anyway, okay kit, not saying it's bad, just it could be so much better. It could have been so much better. Rather than giving us kind of a partial 90s rerun, they could have really brought themselves into the 21st century when it comes to armor kits. Anyway, that's it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm sure I'll get some hate because there are a lot of very loyal Tamiya people out there. I like Tamiya. I don't think you get good value in a lot of cases. But they're nice kits. They're okay. You know, and if I was counseling a beginning modeler, what kit should I go buy? I want to build a tank. Holy cow, I'd be all over Tamiya. I'd say Tamiya is where you want to go. You want to start in Tamiya. You want to build, you know, build 10, 20 Tamiya kits before you go buy Border Dragon. Anybody that has a part count north of, you know, 400 or 500 pieces. So anyway, that's it. Let me know what you think. If you agree, disagree. If you built the kit, what your thoughts are. I'm going to build it. I may or may not do a build review, but like I said, it'll be back for a painting demo. In the meantime, I'm Bruce. I'm a noob. Thanks for watching, guys. Please consider clicking like and clicking subscribe, and we'll talk to you later. Cheers.